It was meant to be a death blow.
Very few people were happier than Rachel Zegler at the release of Snow White, but Yellow Flash, Geeks and Gamers, and Erotic, all of them were way happier. They've just been salivating at their mouths for many months, years even, actually waiting for the release of this film. Of course, Yellow Flash says he hates Rachel Zegler, and he's always making fun of her, but honestly, this reminds me of when you have two 7-year-olds on the playground and there's a boy who always teases that one specific girl. He acts like he hates her, but we all know what's going on. He's got, a crush on her. And I think that's probably what's going on here with Yellow Flash. Is it normal for a 40-something-year-old man to make hundreds of videos about Rachel Zegler and Snow White? Is that something that straight men do? Is this something that gay men do? Eric Debunks, who is a homosexual, spoke about this phenomenon. This is something I covered in a previous video. Eric says, "This just in, adult man is so upset that a children's movie about princesses wasn't great after spending years trashing it and having to watch it alone out of shame. Didn't like it, and had to walk out of a full theater full of families and children. This thumbnail is the chef's kiss. These men are pathetic." And so what my question is what does Rachel Zegler think about Yellow Flash? As it turns out, my super secret Hollywood sources tell me that she is laughing hysterically. For those of you who don't know, Yellow Flash has recently launched a comic book, one which was meant to be released in October of 2023, but is just coming out now. Many people have been anticipating Yellow Flash's late book, mostly because of all the controversies in which Yellow Flash has been embroiled in, especially the one of him not paying his artist and offering him a back-end deal. People have been really curious to see how this campaign would do, especially after January of 2024 when Yellow Flash decided to block a lot of his customers and nuke the Comicsgate community page. Yellow Flash, like Eric July, has 500,000 subscribers, and so many people assumed that they would get a very similar amount of sales. And when Eric July opined on Yellow Flash not paying his artist, this is what he had to say.
But when you are owner of something, definitely in art and entertainment, you are, I think people don't look at it like this, but it's about risk, right? That's what you assume. So when you say, well, Flash didn't pay Dillard just as much as you could say that also the opposite, and Dillard didn't pay Flash because they're both owners, right? And that's how it works. Owners assume risk. When you are an owner of something, you don't get paid. You're the last one that's going to get paid. Let's get into the fun part, and that's the economics of it all. And as I said here, this is a ballsy move by Dillard because, as usual, artists, you got a contractor, you got a guy with a big name like Flash, a bunch of eyes, ears that people are going to lend to him. And, generally speaking, you get like a guy like Yellow Flash, he's going to pay his artist to do something, and then that's going to be the project, but his artist will be paid out as a contractor. He basically waived all of that and instead took 40% ownership of the book. Now, I'm assuming that this is 40-60 of split between those two, and that is with publishing as well as the property itself. And I'm just telling you, I obviously know numbers. If that is the case, again, I'm just assuming that this is true, and that's the case, he is going to make far more money. If this project is successful, people buy into it, he's going to make far much more money, not even close. Way more money than he would just being a general contractor and maybe even getting like a royalty on the back end of that. And it won't take him long to make that money either.
Eric July seemed to have very high expectations for how much Yellow Flash would earn. And considering that both Eric July and Yellow Flash have a similar amount of subscribers and have built their YouTube careers talking about comic books, you'd think that they'd perform similarly, right? Listen to how people talked about Eric July after his comic book campaign launched.
The initial proof of success. I mean, the guy raised $1 million in 24 hours. I mean, that to me shows that people are excited about what he's putting out and that he may have a chance to become big, to take down the big boys, Marvel and DC.
And while Eric July smashed his sales goals right off the bat, Yellow Flash is barely inching forward. It's not even clear if he'll actually hit the goal. That's why Rachel Zegler is laughing hysterically right now. She's laughing at the collapse of Yellow Flash. Yellow Flash thought he put her in check with the ticket sales of Snow White, but now Rachel Zegler has Flash in checkmate. Because this is actually all her doing, and let me explain why. Or better yet, let's have Eric July explain why.
Australian 15 says you're making a straw man argument. No one said viewers equal backers on a 1-by-1 ratio. They're saying your viewers are your primary market, and if you can't get more than a buy, then you're in trouble. All right, that may be your argument, but that's not other people's argument. So let's say that. But either way, I would make an argument that that's stupid. And I'm going to explain exactly why I think that's a dumb argument from a person that's trying to, if that's an argument, especially if you're a businessman and you're trying to make that argument because you're tying so much value in the followership, right? And so you're saying that someone is in trouble just because they have been unable to convert based on what number that is. I don't know, because you're saying it's not a 1-by-1. Well, what is the proper metric and who made it? Where's the manual on the proper conversion rate on a sale because someone follows you for a different reason? You know what I'm saying? So no, you're not. I would argue that you're not in trouble just because they do or do not match. That's irrelevant to it.
Is Yellow Flash cooked? Well, financially, no. He didn't invest anything in this project, but John Dillard did. In fact, he took the biggest risk out of anybody here. He's been working for free for several years, hoping that this would be his big payday. I don't think that this is going to adversely affect Yellow Flash's financial situation. Yellow Flash may have hoped that Eric July would promote his book more, and that Eric July's customers would support his book too. And had that happened, I think that many other YouTubers would have seen Eric July's Ripascend as an opportunity to get a lot of money. And since that didn't happen, it may have actually prevented Eric from getting more customers. So this may have adversely affected Eric. And as much as I'd like to say that Eric July is completely wrong, I can't. He is very correct about something. Eric July properly prepped his customers. He got them really excited to buy his book. They thought that they were on a crusade, fighting against Marvel and DC. Yellow Flash didn't have any of that. In fact, his customers don't even really talk about comic books anymore. Most of his viewers just talk about Rachel Zegler. They're middle-aged men who just can't shake her out of their minds. And as it turns out, the people with Rachel Zegler derangement syndrome aren't necessarily the same people who buy comic books. Spamming this clip
Weird.
and the word snow woke over and over again might give you lots of ad revenue. It doesn't mean you'll actually build a viable brand. It doesn't mean people think you're actually capable of creating meaningful art. But the big question I have is it really normal for a 40-year-old man to obsess this much over Rachel Zegler? Even Eric DeBunks, who is a homosexual, said that this isn't normal. And this isn't the only strange behavior coming from Yellow Flash. Recently, some people have claimed to unmask Yellow Flash's true identity. And this led to a very telling interaction between him and the other panelists on his show.
Do this. That looks nothing like me. AI did a terrible job. Let me see this. Hold on. I wish I could blow that up.
Yellow fat, unmasked.
Looks like somebody smashed my mouth in.
Fucking Flash is a big
Say
guy.
hi to the cops for what? What did you do?
Flash, I wouldn't say Flash is fat by any stretch. Flash is
Especially if you get its AI.
Flash is just a big dude. He's
It's
big.
clearly just being goofy, but yeah.
He was fucking
Yeah.
way taller than me. He was way bigger than me. He's just a big guy.
Look at this hug box here. Yellow Flash's panelists are telling him, you're not fat, you're just big boned. You're just a big boy. Girthy. This is not how men talk to each other. Real men who don't spend hours and hours and hours obsessing over Rachel Zegler would say, yeah, you're a fat piece of crap, get in shape. That's it. But what's with all this sugarcoating and obfuscation? Now, believe it or not, this clip actually gets even funnier.
I think
I'm
he was,
I'm about 6'3" with shoes
and
on.
your proportions
I'm
of
6'1".
size and everything are fine. Like I don't like you're not fat by any stretch.
So here Yellow Flash talks about his height and he says, I'm 6'3" wearing shoes. What type of man tells you he's 6'3" wearing shoes? That's not his height. That's the height of his shoes. I have heard women say their height in heels. They'll be like, I'm 5'6" with heels. It's like, okay, so how tall are you actually though? Or women will buy like these compression stockings, that way they can fit into smaller clothes. Or women buy clothes that they can barely fit into, that way they can pretend that they're smaller than they actually are. I've never heard a man mention his heel size when he's talking about his height. I'm 6'3" with heels. But then again, I don't really hang around men who like to obsess about Rachel Zegler over and over again. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Take a look at what Yellow Flash was saying in John Malin's chat. He said, "Hey John, I'd love to stop by your house sometime if you'd like." I think he meant to say if you'd like. And then he said, "Show you a good time, John." And then John Malin said, "What's a good time?" "You know what it means. Expect me soon." And then John Malin said, "Better ask your wife first, Flash." And at face value, you might just think this is a joke, right? I mean, you'd hope it is. But when you start to put all of these pieces together, the constant obsession with Disney princesses, the effeminate hug boxing, measuring his height in heels, everything starts to finally make sense. A lot of people wonder, why did Yellow Flash suddenly sever his relationship with John Malin? Why did he nuke the CG green room? Why did he block so many customers? The behavior seems erratic. He must have been harboring all of this pent-up frustration, feelings he couldn't express. Maybe he expected Comicsgate, and his relationship with John Malin especially, to pan out a little differently. But maybe John Malin didn't see things the same way that Flash did. And after realizing this, Flash was filled with rage, unleashing unbridled, brash emotion. Perhaps Yellow Flash is hiding more than just his face, but many deep, complex, and tender feelings. So is Yellow Flash joking? Time will only tell. But in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe, or...
You are a hoe ass